So, Helluva Boss has a lot of villains. I don't exactly know how many, but I've compiled a list of characters that you could consider villains at some point or in the future, in the past, whatever it may be, and I'm going to rank them on this tier list based on how likely they are to come back. We've got a couple categories here, top one being absolutely, basically guaranteed, one right below that being pretty much guaranteed, but they might not come back, but it's really unlikely. Then we have probably. These are characters who could come back, but if they didn't, it'd be sort of understandable. Then we have unlikely. We're finally getting past the point of like 50-50. So now, if a character doesn't come back, it's probably like expected. Some of these characters are definitely going to go in that tier. And then we have isn't coming back. This is a list of characters that theoretically could come back, but the writers will probably not bring them back. And then we have a character who's going to go in the can't come back tier. Probably already know which character that is. Oh my god, I'm missing one. There we go. Alright. Now, I do want to explain myself for a second, because obviously I have a couple characters on here who are a bit weird. Some of these characters are definitely minor and definitely not like villains in the traditional sense, but I went on the wiki and I tried to find like a list of characters that people commonly conceptualize as villains of the show, and I couldn't find shit. I just found a Wikipedia article that had like every single character from Helluva Boss and Has Been Hotel in it, and I kind of sat there and said, well, I don't really want to include every single character on this tier list because I'm specifically talking about villains, but I'll just include every character who could be perceived as a villain, so that way it's just like, oh, I'm not missing anyone who could be considered a villain. So yeah, this list is in order of the episode that they appear in, so obviously we gotta start with episode 1. And we have Martha here. Martha is the wife involved in the murder family in the titular first episode, and she's got a very, like, straightforward personality. It's kind of funny, because she doesn't have much depth to her, but she weirdly shares a lot in common with Stella in terms of, like, plot points. She's a character who has cheating involved in her storyline. She's a character who is very incredibly violent and very quick to anger, but unlike Stella, she's actually able to, like, she does seem happy with her husband, even if she's cheating on him, and she does seem like she is kind to her kids. So she's like a better Stella, except a cannibal, you know, from like the Mile High View. As in terms of like her character progression, while we do see her die in the Murder Family episode, Moxie shoots her in the back of the head, in the back of the skull. It's actually kind of brutal. And her whole family dies, which if Martha comes back, like, I don't know of her family. I was going to put them on here, but I was like, no, I'll just use her as like a reference point for like her whole family, any of them coming back. They could theoretically get reincarnated in hell, or however that works, right? And if they get reincarnated and come back in hell, something fun to note, she actually hears Millie say Blitzo's name in front of her. So she is aware of what Blitz's name is, and on top of that, she is aware of, if she's gonna go to hell, Blitz puts up tons of advertisements everywhere for his business, because he wants to get more business. So it makes sense that she would probably see one of those, and then that's a way she could get introduced back into the plot. Now, do I see the writers doing this? I'm gonna put her in unlikely. I don't think they're gonna do this. I think everything we saw with Martha is probably what we're gonna get, but if they do that, that would be pretty cool, because that would be a really interesting way to bring her back into the plot. Alright, well, we have this character, and I'm gonna have to explain why he's here, but you know where he's going. So I put Stolas in here purely because in episode 1, a lot of people, including myself, thought he was gonna be a villain, because he's written in a very antagonistic way, and it's entirely because of, like, Lululand, why we don't see him as a villain, even though he does do some pretty despicable and horrible things. It's kind of like every time he does something bad, there is a reason for it. There's like, you can understand why he's doing and making the decisions that he's making, even if those decisions could, like, you know, be perceived in a vacuum as just like, oh, cheating is a very horrible thing. People shouldn't cheat. But then it's like, okay, well, he's Prince Royalty in hell. His wife, he claims that his wife, like, never really loved him. So, and also it was an arranged marriage, and he never wanted to marry her in the first place. And he's not happy at all. So it's like, you know, he's got some wiggle room there. You know, maybe it's understandable, just a little bit, just a spoonful. But obviously, I don't think he's gonna be a villain in the show with how he's been written. But if he does make the pivot to villain, like he kind of was portrayed in episode 1, that'd be interesting. But I don't know how they would write it. But in terms of if he's going to come back in the show, yeah, he's absolutely coming back. Alright, and then we have Dumb and Dumber. We got Stella right here. So, I've voiced a lot of thoughts about Stella. I'm not going to go into it again here. Other than, yeah, it is really weird how many things she has in common with Martha, just at like a glance. But Stella as a character is currently tied up in the ongoing Stolas and Stella divorce plotline, which is apparently the writer's like favorite subplot to like keep developing, to the point where if you want to think about it in a certain way, Stella could be argued to be like the current main villain, as she's the only villain who's come back like multiple times and constantly and considerably tried to like interfere with our protagonist sort of modus operandi. I mean, she's tried to kill Stolas 2 times, and she has her like little motive situation sorted out in the flashbacks in the first time we see her. So in terms of villains, like, yeah, she's just an evil bitch. And this evil bitch is coming back for round, what would it be now? Like 4, 5, I think. She'll be back. She'll be back. All right, so this one. This is Robo Fizzarolli. This is the robot that is a sort of clone of Fizzarolli, and it's actually interesting because it is very much, when we do meet Fizzarolli, it does have Fizzarolli's personality, but the robot has like distinct memories of Blitz that Fizzarolli like couldn't have had because the robot was working there, right? So when Fizzarolli is like laying into Blitz about like, does anybody love you, Blitz? That's the robot saying it because it observed that, not because it's like a carbon copy of Fizzarolli, which is really interesting. Now, is the robot going to come back? I don't think so. Although this isn't a can't come back situation, because technically, because it is a robot, a future Robo Fizzarolli could be made, right? And that could come back. But then you have like a Thanos endgame situation where you have a character who looks and sounds like another character, but doesn't have the memory of like getting into a huge fight with Blitz. Because if you remember, he gets eaten by a dragon. Like, there's no like salvaging the robot. He gets like completely destroyed. But because it's a robot, he could come back, right? And I mean, they even bring up Lululand in the Aussies episode. So, he could. I don't know. All right. Now we have Verosika. I think she's got a pretty high chance of coming back. She has a lot of unresolved beef with Blitz. She kind of has this whole past relationship with him, but on top of that, she's also a very notable figure in Hell for being a pop star. A lot of the sort of drama around her is the fact that she went to rehab, and apparently she met Blitz's sister there. Yeah, Blitz has a sister, if you didn't know. And, she uses that to, like, taunt Blitz. So, if we ever were to get to meet, like, Blitz's sister, she would probably mention how she met Verosika in rehab. And if Verosika were to come back, she'd probably bring up the sister thing again, because she likes getting under Blitz's skin. And on top of this, the way that, like, the episodes have gone, it seems like she still has a lot more plot-wise she wants to do, to the point where it's like she almost wants to have some kind of resolution with Blitz, and she still hasn't gotten that yet. And whether that resolution is her moving on from the situation, or Blitz fully apologizing to her, so then she accepts the apology, and then they're like on, not like great terms, but like they're not hating each other, you know? That could be the future development. But as of right now, I don't think it's a confirmed guarantee, because like if she were to never come back in the show again, I don't think too many people would be that upset, you know? There's also the chance that that plotline about the giant fish they made with her demon booze, that might come back up, which she's responsible for, so she'd obviously have to come back, because, well, whatever punishment she gets dealt, we'd have to find out about. Alright, this is the Cheerubs. The Cheerubs, the little set of triplets, basically. These ones are weird. These ones are really weird. Compared to, like, every other villain on this list, even the Dhorks, they feel the most disconnected because, quite literally, they're from heaven, right? And at the end of their episode, they're banished from heaven because they end up, like, killing the client. So, they can't come back to heaven because they've sinned. But are they really gonna go to hell because they're angels? So, as we understand it right now, they're probably just bumming around on Earth somewhere, right? Because they can't go back to heaven. They got locked out. They got gatekept, right? So, these characters obviously have a huge score they want to settle with, like, you know, the imps. And on top of that, they know that they run, like, a murder business specifically. How they would get to Hell to, like, actually find them, I don't know. They could, like, invent a plot reason where it's like, oh, there's this portal that can be opened by this mystic object, blah, 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 blah. Like, the writers could, like, fudge some details and, like, get them to that situation if they really wanted to. But I don't see them doing that. But these characters are still, like, bumming around, so I think it's unlikely that they come back. But if they do come back, it would probably be in an episode where, like, IMP is going to Earth to kill a client, and then the Cheerubs, like, interfere again, except this time, instead of being, like, super wholesome, they're actually being, like, murderous fiends because, I mean, they can't get into heaven anymore. So they're just going, like, full off the deep end. I mean, it'd be really funny if, like, they revealed that one of their characters was killed, and then later as a joke, it's like, yeah, we killed him because he wasn't die hard enough with our cause. If they killed anyone, it'd probably be the little goat guy, or lamb dude. I'm bad with animals. Striker! Alright, so, this one's a no-brainer. Striker's definitely coming back. They didn't kill him in the most recent episode, so he is coming back purely based off that. A lot of these characters, if they get into fights and then they survive them, to me, that's just the writers saying implicitly, we have more we want to do with this character. And Striker survives his fight, and he kind of just disappears after it. He's got a lot of unresolved beef with Blitz, and I feel like that's kind of important. I feel like his dynamic with Blitz was the most interesting outside of Moxie, because, like, with Moxie, he was just kind of, like, name-calling him, and, being like, I'm better than you, I'm stronger than you, because you're weak, and that means, like, I am just straight up better than you. Even if you're smarter than me, it doesn't matter, because I'm stronger than you. And he kind of gets justified in this, because he wins, like, every altercation he's in, except for the last one, which is, like, more than just a one-on-one. You get the feeling that if Striker was in a one-on-one with any character, he would probably just win. I mean, he even beats Millie, who's, like, the resident pit bull of the group, and Millie was seeing red because her husband was in danger, so, like, that's, like, roided-up, hulked-out Millie losing to unaware Striker, who just, like, basically, like, taps her against a wall and then she gets knocked out again. She even lands on a bear trap, so she can't get involved in the final climax. Did Striker do this knowingly? I don't know. But what's really interesting about Striker, though, is that, again, with Blitz, he has this sort of camaraderie that is almost immediate. Striker, like, talks up Blitz a lot. He says, like, oh yeah, you're an imp who actually managed to, like, trick a Goetia royalty, which we find out is, like, his whole deal. He hates the royalty. He hates the royalty of Hell with a burning passion. And he started his own little business where he takes hits in Hell and kills people in Hell, specifically people like high-ranking members of society. We don't know much about his business, but we do know that he is like a hitman for hire, and that he has to be like notable enough at his job that Stella found him and like contracted him, right? Or maybe she saw one of the many wanted posters strewn about the like rings of Hell and said, yeah, this guy, I'll just hire him. It is kind of weird though that like in the most recent episode they didn't have Blitz interact with Striker. I feel like that's a huge miss considering that like Moxie's dynamic is just, you're weak. No, I'm not. I'm strong. Oh, yeah? If you're so strong, how come you can't beat me in a fight? Well, that's because I'm weak. Oh, wait. But I'm strong with my head. And the fact that, like, their arc and stuff is really not going to progress that much because there's no other dynamics to their interactions and relationship. Like, Striker makes plays at Millie, but Millie's never going to leave Moxie. Like, what else does she have other than Moxie? Like, she has no other character. So she's never gonna leave him. And then, on top of this, you just kind of have, like, Striker's personality getting really muddled in the most recent episode. He has this really interesting hypocrisy where he's wanting to kill Goetian royalty, but when he has the opportunity presented right in front of him, it's royalty who tells him not to do it, and he just doesn't do it. I feel like Striker, if you wanted to remain more consistent, but you want to keep Stolas alive, he should have, like, permanently wounded Stolas in some way. He should have, like, cut off an arm, or, like, gave him a scar on his face, or, like, something that, like, permanently changes Stolas' character design. So that way, not only does that make more sense, like, oh yeah, Striker, vicious, brutal, like, he will kill these people, but, like, wanting to uphold his end of the bargain to Stella, for whatever reason, even though he doesn't like royalty, he's listening to royalty. I still don't understand that, but, I can buy that there's probably a future explanation. It also make the he can get hurt line make a lot more sense, because now, it's not just Blitz seeing a couple, like, feathers of Stolas with, like, little scratch marks on it. It's him, like, maybe seeing that his feathers are, like, falling off. He's, like, losing blood or something. Like, it's something way more drastic, right? Because if you remember, Blitz doesn't actually see Stolas in his, like, injury state. He just sees his, like, tail feathers. That's all he sees. So it feels like if he saw something more substantial, that would make the line feel a lot more like it actually hit way harder as well, for however you interpret the scene. And I mean, to me, I guess it'd make more sense. Alright, enough about Stryker. Let's talk about Agent 1 and 2. Or the Dhorks specifically, as I'm just going to be referring to them as. So the Dhorks are in an interesting narrative point, because they're the only, like, humans on this list who don't outright get killed and sent to hell. I'm specifically talking about the Agent 1 and Agent 2, the, like, boy and girl, who are the ones, like, the main people we see as a part of the facility that aren't, like, fodder, right? These characters don't die by the end of the episode, which is crazy because one of them gets absolutely manhandled by Stolas, but they don't die by the end of the episode. And they kind of have this cliffhanger where they have proof that the demon realm is real, that, like, hell is real. That's crazy from, like, a world-building perspective. And it's also crazy because in the spring break episode, we find out that there are, like, rules in place that say, hey, if you cause shit on the surface, like, on Earth, you're gonna get punished, right? If you make a big scene. If you remember, that's why Verosika, despite not wanting to, took a deal that scuffed her more than it, like, scuffed Blitz, only because Blitz and his crew promised not to leak the secret about, like, the fact that they put the demon booze into the water and then a giant fish, like, rampaged with it and, like, terrorized the entire beach, right? That's the only reason they take the deal, because they're worried about the punishment. And it really hits hard. I don't know if they did this on purpose. Verosika is, like, a famous figure in society. The reason she got out of rehab early is because she's a pop star. So for Verosika, this high-ranking member of society that isn't royalty, but, like, famous, to fear punishment from the government after having just recently been given the ability to, like, get out for free, essentially, for something she's been doing, that hits hard. That, like, shows you how serious of a punishment this is. I don't know if the writers did that on purpose, but I'm gonna, like, pretend like they did until it's proven otherwise, because, like, that's really cool world building. That makes it feel like such a genuine threat. The problem is that, again, these characters can't get to hell. Like, how is this character supposed to give a VCR tape, or, like, some kind of, like, tape to the King of Hell, or, like, whatever ruling body they need to give it to, like, inform them, hey, your imps, which of this law we don't even know exists, hey, they've been causing some trouble in our world. For all they know, Stolas could be the King of Hell for what he did to them. Like, they have no idea. But as a whole, these characters have, like, so much narrative potential that I feel like they are probably gonna come back. Otherwise, we're just kind of sitting on a weird cliffhanger where we don't really see anything about him. I mean, I'm gonna move him up to, like, high chance, because, like, it'd feel incredibly weird if they didn't come back and do something with the plot. I mean, like, they wouldn't show that cliffhanger if they didn't intend to pay it off in the future. Alright, now we get to the real deal. Fizzarolli. Ozzy and Fizzarolli are kind of going to go in the same tier because they go, like, hand in hand. But it's kind of weird because Fizzarolli is, like, a performer at Ozzy's. Or, like, he and Ozzy have some kind of, like, business deal, right? And Fizzarolli also has a lot of, like, personal stakes with Blitz. We see, obviously, that Blitz has a huge disdain for Robo Fizzarolli, which is probably because he has a huge disdain for Fizzarolli. He also really... He grew up with Fizzarolli, and they seemed to get along really well when they were younger, and then at some point, everything just fell apart. And now we get to the point where they're bickering with each other publicly on a stage during someone else's performance. Like, they hate each other. They do not like each other. Or maybe Fizzarolli doesn't hate Blitz, but he's very mean to him, right? So, he doesn't like him, right? And what's interesting with Fizzarolli is that because he interacted with, like, Ozzy so much, and, like, they seem to just be, like, a complete package, if that makes sense. Like, they did a lot of things together in that episode that were, you know, like they've known each other for a very long time. I feel like it's safe to say that I don't know if they run the business together, but they definitely recently, like, they manage it together on some level. So if Ozzy's comes back, Fizzarolli is coming back, which I feel like is a very high chance. There is a way that, like, Stolas, like, goes to Ozzy's and he gets, like, whatever he needs from there, or he talks to whoever he needs to, and he doesn't see Asmodeus, however you say his name.
Asmodeus.
I'm just gonna call him Oz for the rest of this video. There's a chance he doesn't see Oz or Fizzarolli but he's probably going to see them. Oz is also really interesting because he's very... He makes a lot of, like, direct callouts from a plot perspective that only he could make. Seeing as how he's a high-ranking demon in society, him calling out Stolas for sleeping with an imp, but then celebrating it as, like, the spirit of lust, because that's the ring that he embodies, is really cool character. Like, that's so fucking cool. I really like how that's portrayed in the show. Because him, you would think that, like, his whole perspective would be, oh, look at you, because you're so lustful, you can't even, like, stay with your wife. What does that say about you? You're gonna criticize me? But no, he doesn't say that. He says, I love you for the fact that you came to my establishment, specifically without your wife, but with another person. That is amazing to me. Like, I love that, because that shows that the spirit of lust is, like, alive and well still. But also, he says it in a way where he could cause a huge scandal. Because his episode is probably the one that sets up the most that is yet to be paid off yet. But a lot of these episodes kind of like set things up that have either yet to be paid off or need to be paid off, specifically up here, right? This tier up here. Alright, but that's about all I have to say about Oz. And I really like his design. I like the colors. So, this is Stolas' dad, or as I found out his name, unironically, is Paimon. We don't really see much of him, but he's like a neglectful dad. I classify him as a villain specifically because he put Stolas in, like, I don't know if he specifically put Stolas in the arranged marriage, but he allowed his son to be put in an arranged marriage on any level, and that arranged marriage has gone horribly for Stolas. It has caused him pretty much all of his problems in his life, and it was set up for him by his father, or allowed to happen. I don't know if he's going to come back, but I think he's probably going to come back. We have no reason to think that he's, like, dead or anything, so he's probably just gonna come back for, like, an episode, and Stolas is gonna get his, like, fuck you, dad moment, like, his huge rebellion moment where he gets to, like, finally rebel against it. Like, they set up the Goetia family being displeased with the divorce. It would make sense if Stolas' dad were to show up at some point to voice his concerns, and then Stolas and his dad could have a really interesting conversation about how, like, maybe Paimon thought he was doing something good for Stolas because he was choosing his future for him. But Stolas sits there and he says, no, I need to be able to make my own decisions for my future. You forced that decision on a child who hadn't even met the person they were going to marry. Like, how did you think that was going to go? And then maybe Paimon reveals he was in a, like, arranged marriage. Whoa. And he has daddy issues. Oh, they're not so different! But, all of that is headcanon and speculation. We really don't know much about him. But, again, he's got I like his design a lot. I like his little, like, mask thing for his face. That's really cool. Alright. I don't know this character's name. This is kind of a joke. But I put him on here anyways, I guess, because, like, Blitzo's dad is also shown to be negligent in the same episode. And, look, I don't think he's coming back. Like, he's definitely the lowest on the rung of, like, is not probably coming back. But, like, if we do get another flashback with Blitz, specifically if the Blitz Fizzarolli flashback happens, their dad is probably going to come up again. I don't know if they're specifically brothers, but the father of Blitz is going to come up specifically because, like, it's probably going to be shown, like, hey, sold Fizzarolli because he was, like, the more successful performer to some other place, and Blitz never found out about this, but Fizzarolli did, and something, I don't know. There's a lot of, like, potential, but do I think we're going to get a Blitz dad-focused episode? Hell no. He has, like, no character. Like, all he wants is money. It's kind of interesting to think, though, that, like, in the episode where we get revealed Stolas' dad, we also get Blitz's dad, but, like, Stolas' dad, even though we don't see much of him, we get a lot more of his character, and we see a lot more of, like, where Stolas gets his character from than we do with Blitz's dad. So, I don't know necessarily what's in store for him in the future, but I mean, I don't really think anyone's clamoring for Blitz's dad to come back, like, let's be honest. Now, a daddy figure who is going to come back is Moxie's dad. Like, quickest way I can explain this, if Moxie's dad wasn't going to come back, kill him. Kill him by the end of his episode. Have Millie just kill Chaz and Moxie's dad, Crimson, and then, like, you don't have any of this. Like, they're just both dead, you know what I mean? Like, they're both deceased. But because Millie does this weird, like, glance at Moxie's dad, despite, like, it being established in a previous episode that when her husband's in danger, she sees red, she doesn't murder the specific person who put her husband in danger. She murders everyone who carried out his order, which is fair, but it's weird that, like, you kill the people who carried out the order of the person you're gonna keep alive. I get why she doesn't kill Chaz, because Chaz technically didn't, like, do any of this. He just kind of was like, yeah, I'll partake in this. I'll marry Moxie. I don't care. I have money. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Chaz isn't the one who forced Moxie to wear a wedding dress to get into all the situations. Like, you're under the impression that if Moxie got up at the altar and said no, Chaz would just be like, oh, damn it. And then he kind of, like, walk away. Like, feeling like shit or something. He doesn't feel like the type of person like Moxie's dad. I keep saying Moxie's dad. Crimson. Who would go out of his way to just, like, force the situation. Although maybe Chaz would. I don't know. It just feels way less likely. But Moxie's dad is going to come back. He's got way too much, like, going on plot-wise. And the fact that, like, him and Stryker are, like, kind of similar characters where it's like, oh, Stella wants to kill Stolas. And you have this entire imp who... It's actually weird, because, like, Stryker runs a business where he takes hits on, like, denizens of hell. Specifically, like, royalty is what we're given the context of, usually. And Moxie's dad is, like, this really powerful imp. Like, is that not notable? Like, if he met Stryker, Stryker would probably, like, get along with him really well, because, like, Stryker respects imps that are able to, like, start their own businesses and accrue power, and, like, accrue sway in the world of hell. Now, do I think they're gonna meet? Probably not. I don't know. But it'd be really cool if they did, because they have a lot in common to, like, bounce off of each other with, and, like, are you telling me Crimson wouldn't want to hire Stryker for his group? Like, he's already a criminal. He's already a part of the Mafia. They're already doing, like, illegal shit. And Stryker is someone who, ironically, has a score to settle with the same group of people that, like, Crimson has a score to settle with. Like, that's kind of, like, a cool overlap. So if they did do, like, a tag team episode for these two characters, that'd be really interesting. And then that way you're involving 3 of these characters, like, together, where it's like Stella, like, I've called and I've arranged for a specific person because of your ineptitude at dealing with the problem. And then Crimson with his, like, shitty Italian accent is like, yeah, so, Moxie, I'm coming back. And then Stryker with his southern western cowboy is like, I always hated working with other people, but you people seem like you can get a job done, and I like that. Ooh. Yeah, I'm horrible at doing impressions. But, yeah, these characters, like, they could all have, like, a one-piece... Oh, shit, I said it. They could all have, like, a one-episode thing where, like, all 3 of them, like, kind of get together and, like, vibe it out. Maybe Stella's, like, on the phone the whole time. But these 2 are definitely the 2 villains who I want to, like, interact the most, because they have the most, like, similarities with them. And it's really cool. And I don't know if the writers set that up on purpose, but until they miss it, I'm not gonna say they're gonna, like, miss it. You know what I mean? Speaking of things I don't miss, Chaz. Chaz is, like, the only villain on this list who you'll probably notice who is just straight up, like, deceased. Like, straight up just dead. Like, Chaz can't come back unless he goes to double hell and then, like, you know, re-enters the board by coming back to, like, normal hell or something. But Chaz is... It's weird that Chaz is, like, the only character, and I know most people don't consider him a villain, but for the purposes of this list, like I said in the beginning, I put, like, everyone on it instead of, like, no one. Chaz is just a character who wouldn't strike you as, like, of all the characters to, like, take off the board, Chaz is the one you delete. The one who still has, like, a situation with Millie. Like, imagine if, like, Verosika brought up the whole, like, X plot line, and then Blitz just killed her at the end of the episode. That would feel weird, because if, like, Chaz didn't die at the end of his episode, I would put him at, like, high chance or probably. Because of all the stuff with Millie. But he dies. He gets killed by Crimson. So, like, why? It felt like he had stuff going on. I wasn't, like, the biggest fan of his character. But, like, there was so much, like, narrative potential you could do. Like, he could voice his opinion on so many things about Crimson, about, like, the mob family. He could talk with Moxie earnestly about, like, how their time in the mob, like, changed them, or his experiences, or the fact that, like, he likes being in the mob, and that's why he came back. Like, he could talk about, like, all these different things, because he's the only character extensively in this entire catalog who is, other than, like, Crimson, a member of the same group that Moxie was a part of, and actually was, like, in, like, pretty chill vibes with him at one point. Except now he's just fucking dead. And, like, I don't even think any of the characters of IMP even know he's dead, because it happens after they all leave. So, I don't even know if they're gonna mention it. But Chaz is dead. And while I might be celebrating it, personally because I just didn't like his character. It sucks narratively because, like, I really want to know how the fuck did Millie get with him? Like, what the hell? He seems like the antithesis of, like, the type of person Millie would fall in love with. But I digress. Now we have Andrealphus, who is Stella's brother. And Andrealphus is interesting. We don't really know much about him, but it feels like the only reason he came into being in the most recent episode, he was kind of, like, foreshadowed, but his only role in the most recent episode was just to call Stella, like, a retard, basically, and be like, Stella, you do realize, like, if he dies, the stuff goes to the daughter, not to you, right? Oh, but Andrealphus, I want him dead! Ah! So, that felt like really much of his only character. He's very manipulative, kind of like most members of the Goetia royal family we've met so far are. Or maybe not manipulative, but, like, self-interested. Kind of like Paimon and Stella. It's kind of interesting that, like, all of the royalty is being characterized in a very similar way, and, like, Stolas is the exception to this rule, but he's still self-interested on some level because he, like, you know, went and got with Blitzo, so it's very interesting. It's like a common trait of the family, maybe, or royalty. I keep interchanging those words, my bad. But Andrealphus is a character, I don't think he's, like, as likely to come back as anyone up here, but he's probably gonna come back. Like, I think it's very likely that he comes back, but I don't think it's, like, hard confirmed or anything. Like, all of these characters have, like, things dangling for them to, like, act on as soon as they come back. If Andrealphus comes back, I guess he'd comment on the divorce situation still, but, like, if he comes back, I think, like, other members of the family would have to come back too, to, like, keep adding new perspectives, even if they're just, like, in the background, like in the party scene in episode 1 of season 2. Like, that could be, like, where he comes back into the picture, right? So, I could see him coming back. Like, I just don't think it's as likely as all of these characters. Alright, now, you're probably wondering, this is the end of the tier list, why is the video not over? That's because, boom, boom, boom! Surprise! I've included mystery characters that you aren't affiliated with, you don't know, and these characters are emblematic of something else. So we have this character, which is like the person who, I think this is VizzyPop's icon on Twitter actually. This was just the first result when I searched Heaven in Helluva Boss, and this is the Dear Cherub character who's not affiliated with the Cherubs, but is like the authority in Heaven, and I'm just using this character as like a representation of Heaven as an entity. And I'm going to be honest, Heaven hasn't really played much of a purpose in the show, so I don't think that she's coming back, because she's kind of tied in with the Cherubs. Unless it was revealed that the way that Stryker gets his... This would be the funniest thing. If the way that Stryker gets his, like, blessed weapons is through, like, some hookup in Heaven, and it turns out to be, like, one of these characters, that would be the funniest shit ever. Because it still isn't explained, like, how the angelic technology is getting into Hell to, like, upgrade their weapons, really. They haven't, like... You know, obviously they haven't focused on that plot line. But it'd be so funny, it'd be so cash money if this, like, head angel was the one giving Stryker's weapons, and then the Cherubs find that out, and they're like, You bitch! You're the one who's been doing it! You're just as much of a sinner as we are! Yeah, I am, yeah, no, when I do it, it's different. That'd be really funny. But that's a headcanon, right? But, I think it's probably more likely that Heaven comes back in some capacity as, like, a plot element, considering we still don't have an explanation on, like, the weapons and stuff, but I think it's more likely than the Cherubs, because this is more stuff going on, like, around the show itself than anything else. Alright, this is the kid from the pilot. He's not coming back as, like, how he was, but he could be reinterpreted as a separate character. I put him on this list just because I thought it'd be funny. Because in the pilot, I mean, there's not really, like, a villain of the pilot other than maybe Stolas. Again, he's really antagonistic. But, I just think it's really funny to put him on here. Alright, and then we have Wally. Wally's a really interesting character, because he's kind of like the resident, Larry. If you know Larry from Amazing World of Gumball, he's like this character who works, like, pretty much every job. Wally is, like, the one character we see working everywhere. He works at Ozzy's bar, he's handing out torches at Lululand, he's on television. He actually recruits the two old inventors who get sent to hell because they experimented on the poor. they go to his like company and business. This guy has like a ton of influence and reach. And again, like these characters, he's an imp who started his own business. I mean, he's accrued a lot of power in the world. He works for Fizzarolli and Ozzy. Like he works at their place. And I know it's like a background gag, so he's probably like not going to take the role of a villain. But this is gonna sound like Cap. He's gonna come back in a future episode. Because he's, like, consistently been the person interacting with all of these characters when, like, a job needs to be done. I mean, he's even in Wrath for the Harvest Moon episode. He's the one on stage announcing that, like, the royalty is here and that the festival has begun and yada yada yada. So, it's really interesting that, like, he just has this, like, quirk where he's working all these jobs, and it's so consistent. I don't know if he's necessarily going to take an antagonistic role. If anything, he seems to be, like, pretty, not buddy-buddy with Blitz, but he seems to, like, be on amicable terms, considering the fact that he, like, talks to him like a friend, sort of, like someone he's known for a while. And also, he's not pissed off about, like, Blitz landing on top of him and, like, starting a huge fire in Lululand. If anything, he seems to just completely forget about it. Which is fine, because, like, he's just a business guy. He just wants to schmake the money. And that's cool. On rewatch, like, Wally's character is remarkably consistent across episodes, despite me never noticing that he was, like, the same character appearing in all these episodes. So that's cool. That's cool. So, yeah, this is my list. What do you think of it? I know that, obviously, some of these choices for who's on the list is a bit controversial, but, like I said, I want to do, like, everyone instead of no one. I also want to say, thanks for all the support on the channel recently. And if you want me to make, like, a version of this tier list on, like, a website so then you guys can, like, send your own submissions for, like, what you feel is a better list, a better approximation of the same characters, I'd be willing to do that, but obviously only if you guys want it, because I don't feel like making a tier list maker account just to make a tier list that no one's going to use, if I'm being honest. And, yeah. Does Helluva Boss have too many villains that all need to come back? Because, I don't know. I could see a way where they write it and, like, deal with multiple villains at the same time. But, yeah, it's remarkable that in a show that's only 11 episodes long right now, you know, barring the 3 sort of meme examples I put on here, there's quite a lot of characters that you could consider villains. And that's crazy. It almost makes you think that there's, like, a hell of a lot of villains or something.